Hello again, closing in on the end of the course here for AGRC 210. This is Unit 9, which is going to focus on ethics and trade shows, account collection, and a few other things that are occasionally a little bit tougher and sometimes uncomfortable, things to balance when you're talking about ag sales. First things first, let's hit on professionalism. What's your definition of professionalism in ag sales? And I know there's a number of different things that you can think about. I put this out here as a question for a reason, is for you to think about what that means to you. I would suggest, it's very careful about how you present yourself, and especially know what your company's expectations for professionalism are. And that isn't just how you dress. It's how you speak, what you say, how you speak of others and competition. At a trade show setting, how you present yourself there. Are you on time? Do you stay in your booth space, or is your stuff spilling over into other people's booth space? Are you in front of your table or behind your table? There's a number of different things here, etiquette-wise, that are important from a professionalism perspective. One thing's for sure, people know whenever you are unprofessional and are able to spot it quite clearly. So if you act in a manner that is considered that's what you will be known of. You'll create that reputation for yourself in the sales territory market. So be very cautious that you have a very professional approach to your job. So let's break that down and look at some different responsibilities. And first talk about customers. I think it's very, very paramount importance that you serve the customer's best interest. And if you keep that always at the center point of your work, that keeps you grounded and going in the right direction. Always look for ways that you, your products, the services that you have, the company that you work for can benefit the customer. If you have confidence in those kinds of things, you're responsible to sell that to the customer. There's ways that you can help them. Not only are you responsible to your company to do that, but you're responsible to the customer to do that. Make sure they understand facts about your products, your services, your company, yourself. Make sure that they understand them. And not everybody agrees with this last point, but you're not obligated to point out a competitive advantage or a competitive alternative from competition. You're not obligated to point out that a different brand of seed outperformed you in most test plots. You're not obligated to tell a customer that a competitor's tractor is more fuel efficient. That's not your job. That's your customer's job to do. And some would say, well, wait a minute, isn't that unethical? No. It's your job to sell your product, to present your product in a professional manner. It's not your job to sell your competitor's product. That's their job. It's their job to position their product appropriately so that it sells, or their service. So it's not your job to do that. And it's not looking out for the customer's best interest to avoid doing that. So be careful how you handle those types of things, because if you convince a customer that in an effort to look out for their best interest that they take their business elsewhere, well, that didn't really help you or your company. So you have a responsibility to them to the limitation of the products and services that you have. Furthermore, never misrepresent or mislead a customer. Don't build false expectations. Don't tell a customer that the new feed that you delivered should give them a 75% increase in average daily gain if there's no possible way that that's going to happen. Don't tell them that their cows are going to go up 22 pounds of milk if it's not going to happen. Don't tell them that they can pull a piece of tillage equipment at 12 miles an hour if they don't have the horsepower to do so and can only pull it at 7. Those are false expectations, and a customer will not forget that you told them something that was a bit misleading. They want to believe you. It's important to them. They want to have confidence in you. Lastly, and this is maybe one of the most important things of this section, is protect confidences. you need to avoid things in which you share information that is sensitive, and avoid unauthorized incentives. When you go from farm to farm, and many of you understand, certain neighbors want to know what other neighbors are doing. And if you get the reputation that you will share key information on finances, yields, pounds of milk, death loss, whatever it might be, and some salespeople fall into the trap of doing that because they think it gains confidence in that other customer or other prospect by sharing that information. They'll pump you for it. And what it does is damages your relationship with your current customer and doesn't necessarily grow your relationship with that neighboring prospect or customer. So don't share that information. And don't fall into the habit of providing kickbacks or favors. Some of them are actually illegal, and you need to know that from a company's perspective. Those additives that you might say, hey, I'll do this, please don't tell anybody. That's not the way to operate and be responsible to a customer, yourself, or your company. So be careful that you protect confidences. That's of utmost importance. You're going to know, if you're great at your job, you're going to know a lot of things about your customers and their business, their finances, how much money they're making, whether they're struggling or not, whether they're successful or not, whether they have plans to grow or not. You're going to know a lot of those kinds of things. Don't damage that relationship by trying to curry favor with someone else and share that information. That's bad taste. How about responsibilities to your company? First, remain loyal. Support your company's policies all the time, even if you don't agree. That one's hard to do. I don't agree with things all the time that happen, and you have to be cautious that you try not to share them. It's difficult to do that occasionally. Because there's a balance point between being honest with a customer and being honest and loyal to your company. And you have to be careful on how to do that. Support the total marketing effort for your company. Share market intelligence. Help with inventory. Do office work. Help with correspondence. Do special reports. That's part of your company. That's part of your job. And the better your company does, the better job you will do, and the more that others will help you. How about to the public? Don't degrade the competition. Don't get in the habit of going around and saying so-and-so's company really sucks, or their brand of seed is really terrible. You don't want to do business with them. That will come around to hurt you in the long run. So while it may prop you up in the short term, in the long term, it's a terrible idea. Stay informed. Be clear on regulations, legal responsibilities, and understand if you take personal risk, that is also company risk. So be aware of the legal boundaries that you need to play within. Be responsible to yourself. I say make and take time for personal improvement. You will need to be a continuous learner in your career, and especially in sales. You'll need to be constantly learning about products, about performance, about how to position them with customers. So make and take time to understand those things and to get better at your craft as a salesperson. Honestly evaluate your abilities and where you have deficiencies that you can improve upon. That will be important for you to serve the public better. Keep your personal and professional lives separate. Don't let the performance of one erode the other. And keep things in balance. That's super critical. And don't drag personal problems into the public life, into the company life. That will cause you issues with sales and damage your company and damage your customers, and that's not good either. How about farm shows or trade shows? And I asked the question at the start here: is the investment worth it? A great question, and I encourage you to really think about that carefully before you invest in some of these things. We'll go over some examples in class. But trade shows can be quite expensive to do, not only for just the booth space that you rent, but also, of course, food and transportation and overnight stays and things of that nature. really evaluate whether it's worth it for you and your company to spend time there. Now, if it is, absolutely go for it and make your trade show, your booth, your tent, the absolute best it can be, and go all out and do a great job. Physically, make sure that you have displays in the correct location, have the appropriate literature, make sure that it's neat, clean, inviting, encourages customers to stop and ask questions, has a call to action for them, and is clear what product you sell and what company you represent. With regard to visiting with potential customers, be ready with a handshake and a smile. I mentioned a special situation area. That's sometimes a curtained off space where if you get into a serious selling opportunity with a prospect that walks up to your trade show booth, you can take them off out of the main flow and be able to visit with them individually and get out of the table setting where it's out in public in front of everybody. And then do your show follow-up. If you have cards or contact information, follow up with them. Send the follow-up emails. Send the information that they requested. They're expecting it. They signed up for it for a reason. So please follow up with them. That's how you create sales out of these things. If you're simply there for advertising, then be clear about that in your budget. Be clear about that in your expectations with yourself and your company, that you're simply there to fly the flag and advertise for your company, and you don't really care if any sales come from it at all. Occasionally, it's very hard to tell where sales generate from. So that's one thing to track, and some companies try and do that. Okay, so how do you handle complaints and conflicts? The butt chewings are going to happen. I just need to be honest with you. Bad things are going to happen occasionally, some of them in your control and some of them outside of your control. You're going to have complaints and you're going to have conflicts. Don't be defensive or combative. They're going to happen. Listen carefully, take great notes, judge for the conflict, the reason for the conflict, and prepare carefully if you can. If you know a customer is going to be upset with you, prepare, have good information, bring assistance if you need it. But be ready for these complaints and conflicts. They're going to happen over your career. And as we kind of finish up here, how about collecting accounts? Handle these things carefully and with tact. Customers don't necessarily want people to know that they can't afford to pay certain things. Sometimes you have to think about it if an account is a desirable customer to have on your customer rolls. And that's a difficult conversation to have. And bottom line, like it or not, you know the customer best. So be ready to make contact and deal with a past due account. If a customer is 6 months behind in paying their bill, unfortunately, you're probably going to be the one tasked with collecting that account and making that customer aware that no further product will be delivered until the account is current. That's a very difficult and uncomfortable conversation to have, trust me. But frankly, you know the customer best, and it's going to be your task, like it or not. So handle these things carefully with tact. Be clear about what the plan and options could be, and work through them with the customer. Frankly, it may just be a difficult time, and if you handle it very delicately, very carefully, you may create now a customer that's a occasional customer, a customer that's a short-term customer. You may create a long-term, very loyal customer because you helped them in a very tough time and handled it with grace and tact. So some will say, well, why do customers not pay? Sometimes they don't understand the terms of credit or maybe don't know when payments are due. Honestly, some are just simple poor managers. Some don't have cash flow at the correct times. Maybe they're waiting for grain sales to come through. And so you have to be clear with them and understand what their needs are. You honestly have customers that like to push the upper limits. They want to know how far that they can go without paying a bill before you'll bother them about it. And then they'll make a little bit of payment and push again. And honestly, there's just some customers that are dishonest. They will do the shuck and jive. They want to get as much free product as possible, and then they'll stick you with the bill and walk away. Customers do that, unfortunately, and you have to be prepared for those kind of things. Again, all going to be uncomfortable conversations, so be ready for those kinds of things and understand how your company helps support you in that situation. I don't want to pretend to make you think here that you're going to be out on an island dealing with these things all by yourself. Companies have ways to help you, and there will be district sales managers or location managers that will come help you deal with these kinds of things on occasion if that's the right tact and the correct strategy. But occasionally customers aren't always honest, and we need to understand that. So that wraps up Unit 9, covering kind of a little bit wider array of things that can be a little bit challenging in sales, but important nonetheless that you have proper balance between serving your customer, serving your company, serving the public, serving yourself, and being able to be successful long-term in what can be a very, very rewarding and successful career. Hope you've enjoyed this section. Look forward to further conversation.